Good morning, everyone. This is Randy coming to you from a chilly New England morning here in Providence. Um, Now, I am coming to you today. We're going to talk a little bit differently than we did yesterday. Yesterday, we got into a lot of numbers, a lot of scheme specific stuff, talent, matchups, etc. Today, I'd like to talk to you about why I think this Patriots team is different. Okay, they're a special team. It's a special group, and we're going to talk a little bit today about why that is. Um, you hear the mantra all over the place these days: "We all we got, we all we need." And this Patriots team has become an incredibly tight knit group that is, it has become more than the sum of its parts. And that is what Mike Vrabel has become a specialist in. He has become a specialist head coach at creating a team that is more than the sum of its parts. Um, you know, very few teams reach this point without something deeper, without something special. Culture, it's not fluff. It's about how the team plays under stress when things get off schedule, um, when things aren't always going their way. And we've seen a lot of that throughout this playoffs. We've seen a lot of proof on the field that this Patriots team wins differently than a lot of teams do. Okay. This team doesn't win because everything goes right. They win because when things go wrong, everyone reacts the same way. This isn't nostalgia. This is just observation. Now let's talk about how Mike Vrabel has built this culture up and then ultimately what that means, not just on Sunday, but going forward from here. Because a lot of this show is, we are heavily off-season focused, heavily draft focused. We're going to be talking about free agency in very soon. So let's talk about what this culture that Mike Vrabel has built, this team that we have here in New England now, what that means on Sunday and going forward. Um, and kind of how we got here. All right. Now, when Vrabel arrived, he immediately began talking about culture. He promised to bring a new culture to the organization. Um, he talked about the earn the right mentality. He talked about removing entitlements. He talked about nobody is given a spot. Everyone earns their role. And he talked about it doesn't matter how you got here. Everyone has the same opportunity. He didn't care if you were a first overall pick or an undrafted free agent or what. He was going to give everyone a blank slate to earn their spot on this team. He talked about accountability without favoritism. And he showed that throughout the season. I mean, he handed out the honorary captain role week to week would be given to someone that had earned it, someone that it was important to in that particular week for one reason or another. And then handing out game balls. I mean, Drake May had an amazing season, but this kid didn't get a game ball till like week 11. He talked about putting the team first. He talked about treating the organization and those around you with respect. And then he talked about goals. He talked about the goal to win the AFC East, to host playoff games, and to compete for championships. But nobody thought that would happen in year one. So back in August, Mike Vrabel talked to a local paper, right, Actually, it was Mike. I'm sorry, I have his name right here. Mike Diabates, not a local paper from SI.com. And Vrabel said, I think that we started to have an identity. Again, you have to put it on tape each and every day. Your team has to look a certain way, whether it's the first string guys or the guys that are trying to build some depth and be multiple position backups, special teams players, role players. All that has to carry through. I like where we're starting to go defensively and showing some glimpses of the team defense. I thought our special teams unit had done some nice things. Now, this was back in August when it was already starting to show through. Um, he understood, culture was built at low points. It was not going to be built during championships, during winning runs. It was about having respect for the team, for the room, and for the work. And it was about players knowing exactly what was expected of them and knowing that there was a guy who had their back ultimately when the proverbial shit hit the fan. Um, and so Vrabel went about that immediately. He immediately began the process of building not just a team, but a tight knit group, uh, almost a family, a brotherhood, if you will. He brought in the right guys immediately. He went back into his history and leaders, brought leaders on the field and leaders in the locker room and leaders off the field. He brought in Harold Landry first. This was a guy that he had an extensive history with, the guy that knew his scheme and a guy that he knew that he could trust on the field. He could trust to be a leader for this team. Then he went ahead and he brought in Robert Spillane. Robert Spillane is a player that plays with intensity. He leads by example. And he knew that about Spillane. He had coached Spillane in the past. Spillane came on with the Titans as an undrafted free agent and worked his way up to be a starter. And so he brought this guy on, a living example of work with me, work within our system, and it will bear fruit for you individually. And then they went out and they got Morgan Moses and Garrett Bradbury, guys to help anchor the offensive line, guys to help build the offensive line unit into one functioning unit. Okay, because no offensive line is built off talent, really. You have talented players, absolutely, and you will have talented players that anchor down positions, particularly left tackle, center, which I think is a very undervalued position amongst NFL fans. And you have he brought in these guys who will give you serviceable, reliable starters on the field, but also acted as leaders within the locker room. Okay. And it was clear from day one, even just the small things were set in place for this team to become the unit that it has. Morgan Moses placing his locker right next to Will Campbell. Okay. They had no choice but to finish up practice, go back and talk about what had just happened, right? It's the small details like this that Vrabel helps set things in motion to help build team chemistry. And Morgan Moses quickly embraced that leadership role, okay? He began staying after practice throughout training camp, working with all the rookies, not just Will Campbell, but Jared Wilson, and not just the rookies, but the younger players, the Caden Wallaces, Marcus Bryant also on that rookie list. You would regularly see Morgan Moses staying after practice just to talk to these guys and just to, you know, go over what they had done well, what they had done poorly um, within practice that day, and, you know, kind of where things were going from there. And then he also brought weekly offensive line dinners to the team. Now, whether or not this was something they did last year, I don't know, because there wasn't a huge window into this whole culture building sort of thing like there has been this year. But I know that this year it's worked to bring this unit together to make them feel closer. Then he went ahead and he brought in Matt Collins and Stephon Diggs, guys who are known to be leaders of men, leaders of their peers in the NFL. Diggs, since he got here, has been the emotional leader on the field for this team. He has repeatedly been shown hyping the team up pregame and on the sidelines. And not just the wide receivers, but he's in there with all of his teammates around him, not even just the offense, in there hyping things up. You know, let's go. I didn't come here just to go home. These sorts of things. He's become that hype man for the team. And it's an incredibly important position, especially for someone as talented as Diggs is, with the history that he has. Okay, you can have, you know, no disrespect, but Matt Collins, for instance, come in here with the leadership resume that he has, but he doesn't have the on-field resume. He doesn't have the on-field talent to back that up. Steph Diggs does. Steph Diggs has the resume. He has the ability right now today to get out there. I mean, he's that 1,000-yard receiver for this year. Okay. But Matt Collins was an important part of this equation too. Okay, we saw him before the Broncos game there, out there with his bottles. You know, the Warriors come out to play. Teammates love him. Okay, before the last game of his stay on injured reserve, cameras showed Kayshon Boutte and Steph Diggs talking before the game, saying, "After this one, we get Mac back." You know, they were excited because that was the last game that he had to be on IR. You know, this is a guy, something like 500 yards this year. You can replace that production with a lot of people in this league, but you cannot replace his off-field value. I'm sorry if you can hear my cat, by the way. She's being very loud. You cannot replace his on-field and off-field leadership value. You know, he is an eccentric, interesting individual, but he is an intense player, known for effort and known for leading his peers. And that's what you needed in that wide receiver room. You needed leaders on the field, not just in the coaching room. And last season, we didn't even have that, right? We had first-time coaches, first-time position coaches, rookies. Everywhere you looked, there was inexperience. This year, we are guided by the steady hand of experience. And then not only did he bring in the right guys, but he kept the right guys too, right? Marcus Jones talks about how the GBs have gotten together on off days to watch film. He's really excelled in this system, becoming one of the best slot cornerbacks in the league, inarguably. He has fully bought into this too. He's talked at other points in time about the culture that's being built there. And the right people were kept throughout the building. I mean, from Elliot Wolf on down. And I don't think that Elliot Wolf is, you know, this genius general manager. I don't think he's the architect of the Patriots. No. That's Mike Vrabel. There's a reason Mike Vrabel came here. There's a reason the first call he made was to Ryan Cowden. The second call he made was to John Stretch Striker, because those are his front office guys, and those are the guys that help him make things work. What Elliot Wolf essentially is the head of the scouting department. Okay, Vrabel tells him what he wants and what he needs, and Elliot Wolf goes out and tries to find that. That's it. That's the extent of Elliot Wolf, but he was happy being a part of that here. Okay, and that's important. A guy who can sit there and know his role and do his job. Then guys throughout the organization, throughout the back end, throughout the front end, in particular to me, Alonzo and AJ Highsmith. Alonzo is the father, AJ is the son. I assume Alonzo Jr. But you're talking about scouts and personnel guys across the board. These two guys are very high up in our scouting and personnel departments. And they went and gave an interview this season to Ari Amerov, where they talked specifically about character being very important to them in terms of evaluating football players. So this is an attitude that is carried first and foremost throughout the entire organization. And that's really what it's about. It's about everybody rowing in the same direction. Mike Vrabel came in those first weeks, and he had a lot of things that he talked to the team about, right? We talked about respect. We talked about all of those sorts of things. One of the key things that Mike Vrabel brought with him, and he says that he picked this up from Cleveland, a kind of a variation of something that Kevin Stefanski thought was important. And these guys called it the 4 H's. What Mike Vrabel wanted people to do was get up there in front of the entire group and talk about the 4 H's, their 4 H's. Okay. And that is history, heroes, heartbreak, and hope. First of all, players share stories about their hometowns and their background. They talk about who they are and, how they came to be where they stood today. They talked about heroes. Players discussed the people who have inspired them. And for a lot of players, I heard talk later from Jack Gibbons, a lot of players talked about it was their parents. It was their dad. It was their mom, whatever, who was their heroes. And he said that a lot of people were able to kind of connect on that level because of the attachment between the heroes H and the hope H. And we're going to skip heartbreak for a moment and just get to hope. Players share their goals and aspirations. Jack Gibbons talked about how a lot of players felt like their hope for the future was their offspring, their children. And that being able to tie those things of like, my dad was my hero, I'd like to be my kid's hero, essentially, was something that a lot of players could find common ground on and talk to each other about. Heartbreak was the other H that we kind of skipped over briefly for a moment there. And that's where players open up about their personal struggles or adversity. Will Campbell talked afterwards about how the feeling on the team after these 4 H's was different than any other team he had been on up to that point. Just knowing his teammates as deeply as he did now. Marcus Jones said, learning more about the people that's around you makes you want to play harder for your brother on the field. Jones said that person also has your back as well. I feel like a lot of off the field stuff helped us build our trust when it comes to being on the field. That's incredibly important. Trusting the guy next to you. Now, when it came time for the 4 H's, in typical Mike Vrabel fashion, he went first himself. And he talked himself later about how it was hard to get up there in front of the group and talk so personally about yourself. Um, but this was how he started building a team that felt more like a family, a tight knit team, tightly bonded together. Young players started buying in early. Okay. And this team drafted based upon who would fit into their culture. Will Campbell was their first draft pick as a coaching staff. And I'm telling you right now, I don't care if they were picking fourth, first, 100th. If Will Campbell was on the board, he was going to be their pick. I don't think they would have traded back from first. I think they would have drafted Will Campbell first overall because that was how much they believed in him, in the fit into this culture, and how much they wanted to show that a player fitting into this culture was the most important driving factor as to why they would want that player on this team. They were willing to sink high value resources into a player who, as long as you are capable on the field, you are going to get into this boat and you are going to row as hard as you can in the same direction that we are. And that was it. That was important. And they set the tone for the remainder of the draft and every move since then, to be honest. Um, Now, since then, and really before then, we saw clips of Vrabel down there doing drills and stuff with Will Campbell. We heard talk of Will Campbell putting him on the ground and essentially earning his respect in that manner. But since then, he's continued to build a close relationship with all the players. Will Campbell spoke even about being friends with his kids. Um, Now, Vrabel himself, and also Will Campbell, I know Will Campbell and Morgan Moses are very close. Morgan Moses talked about how his kids call Will Campbell uncle or something like that. But then again, early in the process, throughout the training camp, throughout the early season, Vrabel himself set the example. He showed loyalty. He showed that he cared about these guys, right? Early in the Minnesota training camp there a scrum broke out, okay, over a Travion Henderson block, I think it was. And there's a whole melee breaking out on the field. And there's Mike Vrabel, 50 years old, diving into a melee of active NFL football players, big effing guys, okay, who he dives right in there to back his players, to have his players back, because that's who this man is. He leads by example. He leads from the front. Okay. And he went in there and he earned his battle scars, and with that, the respect of this team. All right. And then we saw early in the season as well, when this team was 1-2, there was no panic. When Ramondre Stevenson was dropping the ball every damn time he touched it, he didn't turn his back on Ramondre. And when the team did start to succeed and started to roll a little bit, and there was a lot of talk about, well, now you got to push your chips in and you got to go get XYZ and this player and that player, and you got to make all these in. No, they didn't panic. They stuck to their plan. They kept their head down, their eyes focused on the path in front of them, and they trusted in the roster that they had already built at that time. Trust is not something that's declared. It's not something that shows up when you sign a dotted line. Okay? Trust is earned. And it's not a matter of going out there and doing trust falls or some nonsense like that. Trust is earned through reps on the field and in person off the field, right? And over time, I think we saw this team begin to buy in, begin to understand, and begin to really gel together in a way that we hadn't seen. Like we said before, these things, they aren't built during the winning moments. They're built during the struggles. And this team starting out 1-2, was probably ideal for the way that they needed to build their culture. Now, when asked about when the buy-in was really full, players referenced the play against the Jets. When Travion Henderson got the ball, he got stopped at the 4-yard line, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All of a sudden, before you knew it, the whole offensive line was behind him, keeping him up, pushing him into that end zone, okay? Only one guy got the touchdown on that play, but 5, 6 guys made it happen, all right? And players talked about that being the example on the field of everything they'd talked about up until then. They talked about working for your teammates, not just yourself. Garrett Bradbury specifically said to Mark Daniels from MassLive.com, that's probably Rabe's favorite play of the year. He's been practicing it, preaching it for months. That's just the perfect opportunity to do it. There's no better feeling as an O-lineman. Your running back is churning for some extra yards. Then the cavalry comes, and then the crowd goes crazy. That's why you play. Mark Daniels went on to say in that article that that one play defined Vrabel's culture change. Road wins became a big part of this, the road warrior mentality that led to a perfect road record, the first NFL team to ever go 9-0 on the road. Just an amazing accomplishment. I mean, in the 100-ish years of the NFL, I'm not exactly sure how old it is, but in all that time, this is the one team to go 9-0 on the road. All right. Now, I understand that, 17 game schedule, part of that's baked in. But listen, up until a couple of years ago, every single team went 8 and it had 8 games on the road. And then it would just be one playoff game on the road, right? So in the playoffs. So it's not like it was unattainable prior to the 17 game schedule. When it came to defensive stands, you could see this team swarm to ball carriers, okay, like a pack of piranhas, right? And our piranhas, big, gigantic, intimidating creatures that if you run into one in the ocean, you're terrified. No. They're itty bitty little things, right? Very sharp teeth. And when they're a group and when they're working towards the same goal, they're incredibly dangerous. And that's how this team is. This team swarms to the ball. And, a lot of these guys, they weren't first round picks. They weren't highly touted prospects. Some of them were cast-offs from other teams. But when they're all rowing in the same direction, where they're all working to the same goal, they are a pack of fearsome piranhas that are more than the sum of their parts. Now, offensive struggles at times, but there was no panic. They've been led by a calm quarterback. And that quarterback's been enabled. His calmness has been enabled not just by the confidence instilled in him by an excellent offensive coordinator who can tell him what's happening on the field, who can literally give him a book of answers, a cheat code, a cheat sheet, if you will, for the test every Sunday. Now, this team has also been led by a calm quarterback who keeps that calm demeanor, partially because he has been empowered and had confidence injected into him from his head coach, a man who simply knows which buttons to push in each player. Okay. This is a man who every time that Drake May goes out, picks up his helmet, trots onto that field for the first time in the game, Mike Vrabel gives him a pat on the back and says, "I can't wait to see you play, kid," which is the same thing he told his kids growing up when they went off to football practice. That's the type of culture that he's building. There's no finger pointing. There's no body language collapse. There's no coded messages sent through the media. There's just simply, I care about you and I have your back. And that means so much to these players. Now, what you want to do is be able to translate how does that culture show up on film? How does it show up in the games? How does it translate into wins? And what you have, as Marcus Jones talked about, is teammates who trust one another. Okay, and what that does is leads to role discipline. You're looking out for the team first, not just your highlights or numbers. Players are doing jobs instead of chasing stats, right? And that means if you have to hold this block up so the other guy gets the sack, then that's what you do. And you don't care. You don't think about it because you care about that other guy as much as you care about yourself and the team. That's been an incredibly important addition to this team. And yeah, that is what I talked about a moment ago. You see this quote here from Ethan Hurwitz. The last thing Mike Vrabel tells Drake May before he goes out on the field for each game is, "I can't wait to watch you play." That's the sort of relationship that he's built with not just Drake May, but every player on this team. The starting quarterback and down to the 53rd man on the roster, down to the guy who can't get on the field, who was a coach's decision, no play every week. Players trust each other, and trusting your help to show up leaves you in the proper position to make a play sometimes. You're not freelancing. You're not going outside of the scope of what you should be doing. You're simply doing your job and knowing that the guy next to you is going to show up and do his job also. And how that has manifested itself is that this team makes you earn your victory. Even if the quarterback's not playing well, even if the star players are having an off day, even if there's some injuries, you are going to have to fight to earn your win with this team. They simply don't beat themselves, and they make plays when they need to. Not only that, they support each other on and off the field. You won't see these guys squabbling on the sidelines. You'll see these guys going over and being like, "Listen, next time, we got it. Don't worry about it." And that's how a tightly knit group operates. And that's what makes for a reliable team. Not a flashy team always. Not always a big number team, not a team that's going to make a whole lot of highlights. In fact, this team only produced 2 Pro Bowlers, right? So that's not a team. It's not a team that's going to make a lot of highlights, but they are reliable and they are going to win a lot of games. They're going to grind out those tough defensive battles. Now, to talk about this as it compares to years past here, Vrabel was here as a player. He knows how to make the team first DNA work from a player perspective, which is an incredibly important perspective to have on this. But the voice, it's different, right? With Bill Belichick, it was a do as I say now because I said it, don't question it, and just shut up and do your job. Literally, that became the mantra, right? But now things are a balance between drill sergeant and caring parental figure. It's not do your job. It's a belief in us. It's we all we got and we all we need. It's turned from doing your job to having fun with your coach, not in spite of him. Now, Vrabel is also more active and involved. He involves himself physically in drills all the time, still, not just for show in training camp when the cameras are on. No, but he also works with each position group individually. He comes over wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers. He gets in there with the blocking pads, he gets in there to talk about the specifics of their game, the little nuances that make the difference between a win and a loss. Really. And that's really what it's all about. This is this is not the old Patriots, but it's in the same vein. It's in the same ballpark. Okay. Just with a friendlier face, one that is not afraid to show you that he cares, one that is not afraid to get up in front of a room of brand new players and be the first guy to talk about his heartbreaks and his hopes and his history and that other H that I forgot because there are 4 of them. His heroes. And that's the difference, because you could never imagine Bill Belichick doing that sort of thing. And right now, in this moment, as we head into this weekend, we've got the pressure of the playoffs. We've got the stage of the Super Bowl with a national spotlight, a week leading up to this game that reminds you everybody's watching you because you're the only game on right now. But when your back is against the wall and you already know who you are and you already know your brothers have your back, you're good. This is the moment that culture really ties in. And that's why this Patriots team is special. Okay. They are greater than the sum of their parts. I mean, and that's Mike Vrabel is an expert, right? It's become his calling card. Building teams that are greater than the sum of their parts. I mean, I think if you sent this man a bookshelf from IKEA, he might build a friggin' house out of it. Okay? Because that's what he does. He takes parts and he builds more than you think he can. All right? He doesn't come out with leftover parts. No, he builds a friggin' masterpiece with them. Now, going forward from here, not just in the Super Bowl, where this tight-knit team that's fighting for more than just themselves, they're fighting for each other, they're playing for each other. But going forward from here after that game, what does this all mean for this team, right? And I'll tell you what it means. This team will continue to prioritize cultural fits with its highly valued assets. And now, what do I mean by that? I'll tell you exactly what I mean. Last year, we already saw it last year, okay? And we're going to see more of it this year. But we're going to be able to see a little bit more of a selective version of it because last year, players weren't sure what they were coming into, right? So in the free agency market, we went out, our first contracts, Mac Hollins, okay? Priority, boom, Spillane, Landry. These guys were a priority, okay? And then later on, when we brought in Diggs, now let's be honest, there was a lot of BS surrounding Diggs, and there still is. I mean, off the field, we've seen a number of incidents just in the not even year he's been here, right? So there were questions about him, about his fit, about his personality fit. He was still acquired, and yeah, he was paid solid money. Okay, solid money, even by NFL standards. 20 something million a year. I think it's like 23 million a year is the AAV, I think. But this is a contract that they can get out of after this year if they want to. Okay, so it wasn't what you would consider a highly valued asset, right? Not like DK Metcalf demanded with a trade and then 35 million a year on top of that. No. This is not a highly valued asset. It was something they could get out of quickly. Let me give you another example from last year. Will Campbell, 4th overall pick, this administration's first draft pick, drafted almost solely because of his cultural fit within this team. That's the high value asset. Now look further down the draft board. The 5th round, we picked up Braden Swinson. Braden Swinson, a very talented player, but fell to the 5th round because he was notoriously hard to work with, hard to coach, uncoachable, some people would call him. I don't think I'd call anybody uncoachable when it comes to Mike Vrabel, but he was widely known to be an uncoachable prospect, someone who he was hard to get to. It's hard to talk to. It's hard to motivate for some players. He was combative with coaches. Didn't always have this level of respect that coaches wanted him to have for them, I think. And that's kind of a good way to put it. Okay. Talented, very talented. But we didn't spend a 2nd round pick or 3rd round pick, not a top 100 pick. Those are valuable picks. Those are guys you want to be starters, to contribute immediately. You don't want questions about those guys. You want those guys to slide right in, fit right into what you're doing, immediately be rowing the same way. And that's what we did with our top 100 picks, right? Will Campbell, Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, Gerald Wilson. All picked in the first 3 rounds, top 100 picks. Braden Swinson picked outside that. Still willing to take a risk on fitting a guy into the culture, even in year 1, even when you're turning over more than 50% of the roster, and you're not really entirely sure where your culture is going to land, where all the buy-in's going to be, but they still took that risk with a lower value asset. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward, right? Those top 100 picks, those first 2-day picks, those are valuable assets. And those are going to be on guys who increase this culture, who beef up this roster without being any sort of distraction, without being any sort of risk. But we also have seen this team accumulate a glut of day 3 picks. We have 2 4th round picks, 4 6th round picks, and that's before compensatory picks are handed out. Okay. So 12 picks in the draft. Now, some of those later round picks might be used to slide up or slide down the board. I actually think, and we'll get into more details later, that trading up into the early 20s would be a very good plan in some scenarios for the Patriots. But again, we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. The point is that 12 draft picks, with 8 of them being on day 3. That means you're going to take a lot of shots, okay? And you can take a shot on a talented guy who's fallen because of issues fitting in, issues with the culture, issues with attitude, issues with work ethic, things like that. You have a lot more leeway in year 2 with a firmly entrenched, established culture that got you to the Super Bowl, right? You still don't want to take those risks with high value assets right now. You're still in year 2 of building a long-term dynasty that you plan to watch blossom for years. But lower value assets will be used to bring in players that may assimilate into the already built culture. We're talking bargain free agent deals, guys looking for another chance. Caleb Von Chason, great example this year. And look at him. He slotted right in here. He fit right in. He felt at home. And what did that result in? His best year as a pro. This culture that has been built is one that players want to be a part of. This may allow the Patriots to get team-friendly deals from, other free agents, folks they don't already know, folks that the word has gotten out. Players want to play for a good coach with a good QB, especially when one or both have the right personality. This team has established itself now as a destination franchise, and that matters more than anything else, more than the results of this weekend, more than the results of last weekend. Okay, that matters long term. Because no matter what happens this week, the Patriots team has already established firmly exactly what they are, and that is a contender for a long time to come, and a healthy culture and team that cares about one another, that brings that attitude and success to the field. All right, guys, that's all we got for today. Tomorrow, I am going to bring in a guest podcaster. I keep intending to bring his name up, and then I forget to write it down. And if you know me, you know how terrible I am with names. Peter Quinn. Peter Quinn is his name. He is a fellow draft professor with me on the Draft Professors podcast. We have actually not done an episode together. I am rather excited. He's a Scottish gentleman. He's going to have a Scottish accent. It's going to be interesting. He's also a Seahawks fan. And I thought it was very important to try and go and find someone on the other side of the fence that we can talk about this matchup with, both before and after the game. We're going to have him on tomorrow to talk about the upcoming game. And next week, he and I are going to sit down again on this show, regardless of the results. Doesn't matter who wins. He and I are going to sit down again. We're going to talk about what went on during the Super Bowl, how the game was won, how the game was played, and kind of where the respective teams go from here. So tune in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Myself, Peter Quinn from Draft Professors, we get into this game and we find out what the enemy's thinking. Have a great day, guys. Please like the video, subscribe, share it to your friends. Look, we're a small channel right now. I really need your help. Okay. I need you to be a part of this thing that we're building here. All right. This is the sports alternative to sports radio. That's what I call it. That's why I started this, because people like me that turn on sports radio at 9 a.m. when they get to work, when they get in the car, they're headed somewhere and they listen to 10 minutes of somebody that they have no idea who they are ranting on about, Taylor Swift or random news stories or that phantom shoulder injury that all of Boston sports radio spent the last week squawking about. That was never a thing. Okay. Drake May hasn't missed one practice. He's never been limited on listed on the injury report due to his shoulder. Okay. Mike Vrabel likes playing games with these guys. And that's what we saw a lot of this week. And these guys fall right into it. And then they waste hours of your time talking about shit that they know is totally inconsequential, that anybody with two eyes and an IQ above salad dressing knows doesn't fucking matter. My apologies for the language. Those of you who know me in real life know I try to tune it down a great deal here, but it's nonsense. And it frustrates me that they sit here and they want to waste our time. It's fine if they want to waste their time, but why do they have to waste our time? Tune in here. We talk sports. That's it. None of the fluff, none of the bullshit, just the facts, just the snap judgments. Like, subscribe. Don't miss a moment. We'll see you tomorrow, guys.